My wife Miranda came home at 2:47 a.m. with another man's cologne on her blouse and the audacity to tell me she'd been working late with Rachel again. I was sitting in our kitchen, nursing my third cup of coffee and watching the clock tick away what remained of my faith in our marriage. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "You're up late," she said, not quite meeting my eyes as she kicked off her designer heels. The same heels I'd bought her for Christmas back when I still believed we were building something together. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, studying her face in the dim light. Miranda Shaw, formerly Miranda Caldwell, was still beautiful at 32, with that sharp-edged prettiness that had first caught my attention at a company mixer 5 years ago. But now, looking at her smudged lipstick and the way she avoided my gaze, I saw something else entirely. "Big day tomorrow," she said, heading toward the stairs. "The promotion announcements, remember?" How could I forget? After 3 years of 60-hour weeks, missed dinners, and kissing the right asses at Summit Horizon Tech, I was finally going to get the regional director position. My boss had practically promised it to me last month. The salary bump would change everything, maybe even save what was left of us. "Right," I said. "The promotion." She paused on the bottom step. "Oliver, I need to tell you something about that." The way she said my name, like she was talking to a child who needed disappointing news broken gently, made my stomach drop. But she just shook her head and continued upstairs, leaving me alone with my coffee, and a growing sense that tomorrow was going to be worse than I imagined. I'd met Miranda when she was a junior marketing coordinator, and I was a logistics manager trying to work my way up from my military background. She was ambitious, driven, and had a way of making you feel like you were part of something bigger. Within 2 years, she'd climbed to department head. Within 3, she was angling for VP. Last year, at 28, she became the youngest CEO in Summit Horizon's history. Meanwhile, I was still waiting for my shot. The next morning, I sat in the executive conference room with 12 other department heads, watching Miranda command the room like she was born to it. She wore her power like expensive perfume, subtle but unmistakable. Rachel Connors sat to her right, taking notes with the focused intensity of someone who knew secrets. Rachel was Miranda's college roommate turned best friend, turned constant companion. 29 years old, Harvard MBA, and possessed of the kind of calculated charm that made you feel special, right up until she slid the knife between your ribs. She'd joined Summit 6 months ago as a strategic consultant, though what she consulted on remained mysteriously vague. "Before we discuss quarterly projections," Miranda said, her voice carrying easily across the room, "I want to announce some organizational changes that will position us for aggressive growth in the coming year." My palms were sweating. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment. The regional director position would mean a 40% salary increase, stock options, and finally, the respect I'd earned but never received. "I'm pleased to announce that Rachel Connors will be taking over as regional director, effective immediately." The words hit me like a physical blow. Around the table, faces turned toward Rachel, who accepted congratulations with practiced grace. A few people glanced at me, some with sympathy, others with the uncomfortable look of witnesses to an execution. "Rachel brings a fresh perspective and innovative approaches that will drive our expansion into new markets," Miranda continued, never once looking in my direction. "I'm confident she'll exceed our ambitious targets for the next fiscal year." Rachel stood, smoothing down her skirt. "Thank you, Miranda. I'm excited to implement the strategic initiatives we've been developing together. I have some revolutionary ideas about market penetration and client acquisition that I think will surprise everyone." Revolutionary ideas. I recognized every single buzzword from the presentation I'd spent 2 months perfecting, the one I'd submitted to Miranda's office last week. the same presentation that was apparently so revolutionary when it came out of Rachel's mouth. After the meeting, I lingered in the conference room, stacking papers I didn't need to stack, waiting for the right moment. When the room finally emptied except for Miranda and Rachel, I made my move. "Congratulations, Rachel," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "That was quite a presentation." She smiled, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. "Thank you, Oliver. I know this might be disappointing, but I hope you'll support the transition." "Oh, I'll definitely support it," I said, "especially since half of your revolutionary ideas came directly from my market analysis report, the one I submitted last Tuesday." Miranda's face went carefully blank. "Oliver, I think you're upset, and maybe not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking very clearly," I interrupted. "Clear enough to recognize my own work when I hear it. Clear enough to know when I'm being played." Rachel's smile faltered. "I'm sure any similarities are coincidental. Great minds think alike, after all." "Great minds," I repeated. "Right." I pulled out my phone and opened my email app, fingers moving with deliberate precision. The resignation letter I'd drafted during the meeting was short and to the point. I hit send, watching both women's faces as they received the notification simultaneously. "There," I said, standing up. "Consider this my support for your transition. You won't have to worry about my hurt feelings anymore." Miranda's CEO mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something that might have been panic. "Oliver, don't be dramatic. We can discuss this." "Nothing to discuss," I said, already heading for the door. "I'm sure you and Rachel have everything well in hand. After all, you've been working so closely together lately." I left them sitting there, the weight of unspoken accusations hanging in the air like smoke. The driftwood sat at the edge of Summit's industrial district like a middle finger pointed at corporate respectability. It was the kind of place where blue-collar workers drank away their frustrations, and office refugees like me could disappear into blessed anonymity. The owner, Troy Brennan, had been my friend since high school. Back when life was simpler and betrayal was something that happened in movies. "You look like someone pissed in your cornflakes," Troy said, sliding a beer across the scarred wooden bar. "Let me guess, the wife?" "The wife, her best friend, and my entire career," I said, taking a long pull from the bottle. "The holy trinity of personal destruction." Troy whistled low. "That bad?" I told him about the meeting, about Rachel's promotion, about recognizing my own work coming out of her mouth. Troy listened with the focused attention of someone who'd heard a lot of sob stories, but recognized when one was different. "So what's your play?" he asked when I finished. "Don't have one yet," I said. Still processing the fact that my wife of 5 years helped her college roommate steal my job using my own ideas. "You sure about that? I mean, sure about them working together on it?" I thought about Miranda's late nights, her evasiveness, the way she and Rachel finished each other's sentences during meetings. "Pretty sure." "Then you need proof," Troy said. "And lucky for you, I know someone who might help." That someone turned out to be Jeff Morrison, Summit's IT administrator, and a man with several axes to grind against company management. Jeff was 42, divorced, and possessed of the particular bitterness that comes from watching less qualified people get promoted over you for 15 years running. We met at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where the coffee was strong and the questions were few. Jeff looked exactly like central casting would order for disgruntled tech worker. Pale, thin, with the slightly manic energy of someone who spent too much time staring at screens. "I heard about your resignation," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Can't say I'm surprised. Miranda Shaw's been playing games since she got the CEO job." "What kind of games?" Jeff glanced around the nearly empty diner, then leaned forward. "You know how she got that promotion? It wasn't her brilliant marketing strategies or her leadership potential. She had help, lots of help." "From Rachel?" Rachel's part of it, but she's not the whole story. Jeff pulled out his phone, swiping to a series of screenshots. Company email server backs up everything, even deleted messages. Most people don't know that. Miranda apparently doesn't know that. He showed me the first screenshot, an email from Miranda to Rachel dated 3 months ago. The subject line read, "O's market analysis? Thoughts?" My market analysis. The one I'd been working on for weeks. The one that had supposedly impressed Miranda so much she'd asked for regular updates. She was sharing your work with Rachel from the beginning, Jeff said, not for feedback or collaboration, for theft. The next screenshot showed Rachel's response. "This is exactly what we need for the RD position. Can you get more details on the client acquisition strategies?" "Keep going," Jeff said, swiping to the next image. This one was from Miranda. "He's been so helpful, sharing everything. Doesn't suspect a thing. By the time we're done, Rachel will know his job better than he does." I stared at the screen, feeling something cold and sharp settle in my chest. It wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated, premeditated destruction of everything I'd worked for. "There's more," Jeff said quietly. "Much more." The next series of screenshots revealed the full scope of their conspiracy. Miranda hadn't just been sharing my work with Rachel. She'd been actively sabotaging my reputation with other executives, planting seeds of doubt about my commitment and team player attitude. Meanwhile, she'd been building Rachel up as the innovative thinker who could bring fresh energy to the department. But the worst was yet to come. "This one's from last week," Jeff said, showing me an email that made my blood run cold. Miranda to Rachel. "Oliver's getting suspicious about the promotion timeline. We need to accelerate the announcement. Can you be ready to present your strategy tomorrow?" Rachel's response. "Already prepared. His presentation is flawless. I barely had to change anything. He's actually quite good at this job. Too bad he won't be doing it much longer." Miranda's reply. "Don't worry about Oliver. I'll handle him at home. A few late nights, some tears about work stress, and he'll be so focused on comforting me he won't see it coming. Men are so predictable." I set the phone down carefully, fighting the urge to throw it against the wall. "How long have you had these?" "Been collecting them for weeks," Jeff said. "Miranda thinks she's untouchable, but she's sloppy with digital security. Leaves her email open, uses the same password for everything, forwards sensitive information to her personal account. It's like she wants to get caught." "Why are you showing me this?" Jeff's smile was bitter. "Because Miranda passed me over for IT director last year. Gave it to some kid fresh out of college who didn't know a server from a sandwich. Said I lacked forward-thinking vision. I've been waiting for the right moment to return the favor." "And this is that moment?" "This is that moment," he confirmed. "Question is, what are you going to do with it?" I thought about Miranda coming home at 2:47 a.m., about her smudged lipstick and evasive eyes, about 3 years of my life invested in a company that saw me as nothing more than a convenient source of ideas to steal, about a wife who'd been playing me like a mark in a con game. "I'm going to destroy them," I said quietly. "All of them." Jeff's grin was sharp enough to cut glass. "Now you're talking my language." Rachel lived in one of those modern downtown condos that screamed, "I make more money than you," and want everyone to know it. 20th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a view of the harbor that probably cost more per month than most people's salaries. I'd been there exactly once before, for a housewarming party where Rachel had spent the evening name-dropping clients and making subtle digs at people who lacked ambition. I knocked on her door at 7 p.m. on a Thursday, knowing she'd be home because Miranda had mentioned Rachel's sacred weeknight routine of yoga and wine. When she answered, she was wearing designer athleisure and holding a glass of what looked like expensive Chardonnay. "Oliver?" she said, surprise flickering across her face. "What are you doing here?" "Thought we should talk," I said. "About the promotion. about how well you've adapted to your new responsibilities. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. Of course. Come in. The apartment was exactly what I'd expected. All clean lines, neutral colors, and carefully curated art that suggested sophistication without actually requiring any. Rachel gestured toward the living room, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered that million-dollar view. "Can I get you something to drink?" she asked. "I'm good," I said, settling into one of her uncomfortable modern chairs. "Nice place. The regional director's salary must be treating you well." "Oliver, look," she began, setting down her wine glass. "I know you're upset about the promotion, but—" "Upset?" I interrupted. "No, I'm not upset. Upset is what you feel when your favorite restaurant changes their menu. This is something else entirely." She sat across from me, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. "I understand you're disappointed, but these decisions are based on multiple factors." "Like my market analysis report?" The question hung in the air between us. Rachel's composure slipped for just a moment, a barely perceptible tightening around her eyes, before the mask slid back into place. "I'm not sure what you mean," she said carefully. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots Jeff had provided. "This is an email from Miranda to you, dated 3 months ago. Subject line, O's market analysis, thoughts." That's me, by the way. The O. Rachel glanced at the phone, her face going pale. "Oliver, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Your response was interesting," I continued, swiping to the next screenshot. Quote, "This is exactly what we need for the RD position. Can you get more details on the client acquisition strategies?" End quote. "You're taking things out of context," she said, but her voice had lost its confident edge. "Context," I repeated. "Let me give you some context." I spent the next 10 minutes walking her through every email, every stolen idea, every calculated move in their months-long campaign to destroy my career. With each revelation, Rachel's composure cracked a little more, until she was gripping her wine glass like a lifeline. "Here's my favorite," I said, pulling up the final screenshot. "Your email to Miranda last week. His presentation is flawless. I barely had to change anything. He's actually quite good at this job. Too bad he won't be doing it much longer." Rachel set down her wine glass with shaking hands. "Oliver, I can explain." "No need," I said, standing up. "It's actually quite brilliant. Identify the most competent person in the department, steal their work, use their own ideas to justify their replacement, then step into their job with a ready-made strategy for success. Elegant, really." "It wasn't like that," she said, but the protest sounded hollow, even to her. "Wasn't it?" I moved toward the windows, looking out at the harbor lights. "You know what the funny thing is? I actually respected you. Thought you were smart, capable, maybe a little ruthless, but in a way that would serve the company well. I never imagined you were just a common thief." "I'm not a thief," Rachel snapped, some of her old fire returning. "I worked for that promotion. I earned it. With my work. With my execution of strategic initiatives that I developed," I finished, "using research I conducted, analysis I performed, and strategies I created. You didn't execute anything, Rachel. You just wore a better suit while presenting it." She stood up, pacing toward the kitchen. "You don't understand the pressures I'm under, the expectations. Miranda needed someone who could—" "Miranda needed a puppet," I said. "Someone who would do exactly what she wanted while giving her plausible deniability. And you volunteered for the job." Rachel spun around, her mask finally slipping completely. "You think you're so much better than me? So noble and pure? You're just another mediocre middle manager who can't understand why talent gets rewarded over tenure." "Talent," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" "I have an MBA from Harvard," she said, her voice rising. "I graduated summa cum laude. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. And yet, You needed to steal ideas from a mediocre middle manager to succeed in your new job. The words hit her like a slap. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it, apparently realizing that any defense would only make things worse. I pulled a manila envelope from my jacket and set it on her coffee table. That's a complete record of your email correspondence with Miranda over the past 4 months. Every stolen idea, every calculated move, every moment of casual contempt for the person whose work you built your career on. Rachel stared at the envelope like it might explode. What do you want? Nothing from you, I said, heading toward the door. You've already given me everything I need. Oliver, wait, she called after me. We can work something out. I can talk to Miranda, maybe find you a position in another department. I paused at the door, looking back at her. She stood in the middle of her expensive apartment, surrounded by all the trappings of success, looking smaller and more desperate than I'd ever seen her. Rachel, I said quietly, by the time I'm done, you won't be in a position to help anyone, including yourself. I left her standing there, the envelope of evidence sitting on her coffee table like a ticking bomb. As I waited for the elevator, I could hear her frantically dialing her phone, probably calling Miranda to warn her that their carefully constructed house of cards was about to come tumbling down. But I was counting on that. After all, the best revenge required an audience, and I wanted both of them to know exactly what was coming. Miranda was waiting for me when I got home, sitting at our kitchen table with her laptop open and her phone beside her. She'd changed out of her CEO power suit into jeans and a sweater, the casual uniform she wore when she wanted to appear approachable and reasonable. Rachel called, she said without preamble. I figured she might, I replied, hanging my jacket on the back of a chair. How did she sound? Panicked. She said you have emails that you're planning something. Miranda's voice was carefully controlled, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Oliver, I think we need to talk. About what? Your strategic partnership with your college roommate? Your months of sharing my work behind my back? Or maybe about where you've really been during all those late nights? She flinched at the last question, confirming what I'd already suspected. The stolen promotion was just the beginning. There were deeper betrayals yet to be uncovered. It's not what you think, she said, the classic opening line of every cheater in history. Really? Then explain it to me. I sat down across from her, noting how she angled her laptop screen away from my view. Help me understand how my loving wife spent 3 months systematically destroying my career to benefit her best friend. Miranda closed the laptop with a soft click. The promotion wasn't about hurting you. It was about what was best for the company. Using my ideas? Using good ideas, regardless of their source. That's what leadership means, Oliver. Making decisions based on results, not sentiment. Her casual dismissal of 3 years of my work hit harder than I'd expected. This wasn't the woman I'd married, or maybe it was, and I'd just been too blind to see it. So I'm sentiment now? You're my husband, she said, as if that explained everything. I was trying to protect you from a situation that would have been uncomfortable for both of us. Protect me, I repeated, by stealing my work and giving my job to someone else. By preventing you from being put in a position where you might fail, she said, her voice taking on the patient tone she used with difficult clients. The regional director role requires a specific skill set, a certain kind of presence. Rachel has that presence. And I don't. Miranda hesitated, and in that pause I saw the truth she'd been hiding for months, maybe years. You're good at what you do, Oliver. You're reliable, thorough, dedicated. But leadership requires something more. Something you don't think I have. Something I know you don't have, she said quietly. I'm sorry, but it's true. You're not executive material. You never were. The words should have hurt, but instead, they brought a strange kind of clarity. This wasn't about one stolen promotion or one betrayed friendship. This was about how my own wife saw me, as a reliable middle manager who should be grateful for whatever scraps fell from the table of her success. "You're right," I said, and she looked surprised by my agreement. "I'm not executive material. I don't have the skill set required to smile while stabbing people in the back. I lack the specific presence needed to steal other people's work and call it leadership. That's a real character flaw." "Oliver, but I do have other skills," I continued. "I'm thorough, like you said. When I investigate something, I dig deep. When I find a problem, I solve it completely. And when someone betrays me, I don't just get mad. I get comprehensive." Something in my tone made her sit back. "What does that mean?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a particular screenshot, one I hadn't shown Rachel. "This is an email from you to someone named Liam, sent 2 weeks ago at 11:30 p.m. Quote, 'Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. Oliver thinks I'm working late with Rachel again.' End quote. The color drained from Miranda's face. "How did you—" "Liam Hart," I continued, reading from my notes. "Corporate legal consultant, works with Summit on contract negotiations. Divorced, lives in that new complex on Harbor Street. Drives a black BMW with the license plate LH Lab 1. Subtle." Miranda's hands were shaking now. "Oliver, I can explain." "Can you? Because there are 47 emails between you and Liam over the past 6 months. Dinner plans, hotel reservations, detailed discussions about how to manage your situation at home. That would be me, by the way. I'm your situation." She opened her mouth to speak, but I wasn't finished. "My favorite is from last month," I said, pulling up another screenshot. "Liam asks if you feel guilty about lying to me, and you respond, 'Oliver's so focused on his work, he barely notices I exist. This is as much his fault as mine.' That's a nice touch, blaming the victim for your infidelity." "It's not that simple," Miranda said, tears starting to form in her eyes. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the loneliness." "The loneliness of success," I said. "How tragic. So tragic that you had to seek comfort in the arms of a legal consultant while simultaneously destroying your husband's career with the help of your college roommate. It's like a country song, except with more betrayal and better health insurance." She was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration at being caught. "What do you want from me, Oliver? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry it happened this way. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. I'm sorry everything got so complicated." "Complicated," I repeated. "That's one word for it." I stood up and walked to our home office, returning with a cardboard box filled with documents, printed emails, and photographs. Miranda watched in growing horror as I set it on the table between us. "This is everything," I said. "Every email between you and Rachel about stealing my work. Every message between you and Liam about your affair. Every lie you've told. Every betrayal you've planned. Every moment of casual contempt for the man stupid enough to love you. What are you going to do with it?" "That depends," I said. "On what you do next." She wiped her eyes, trying to regain some composure. "What do you mean?" "I mean you have a choice. You can try to salvage this marriage, your career, and your reputation through honesty and genuine remorse. Or you can continue lying, manipulating, and treating me like an obstacle to be managed. But understand this. I'm not the same man who sat in that conference room yesterday watching his wife help her friend steal his job. That man was naive enough to believe in fairness, loyalty, and the basic decency of people he loved. I'm not that man anymore." Miranda looked at the box of evidence, then at me, calculating her options with the same cold precision she brought to business decisions. "And if I choose honesty?" she asked. "Then we have a conversation about how to move forward, about whether this marriage can be saved, whether your career can survive the scandal, whether Rachel keeps her stolen job. And if I don't?" I smiled, and something in that expression made her recoil. "Then you'll discover just how thorough I can be when I put my mind to it. And Miranda?" I've had a lot of time to put my mind to it. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing the options, calculating the risks, trying to find an angle that would let her maintain control of the situation. Finally, she spoke. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning, I said. After that, I start making phone calls. I left her sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by the evidence of her betrayals, finally understanding that the reliable, thorough, dedicated husband she'd dismissed as not executive material had just outmaneuvered her completely. Miranda chose poorly. I woke up the next morning to find her side of the bed empty and a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to my sister's to think. Need space to process everything. Don't do anything rash. We can work this out. M. She'd also taken her laptop, her phone charger, and, I discovered when I checked our joint account, $3,000 in cash. Not exactly the behavior of someone planning to choose honesty and genuine remorse. More telling was the email I received from Rachel at 6:47 a.m. Oliver, I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. I'd like to make this right. Can we meet for coffee? I have some ideas that might benefit everyone involved. They were circling the wagons, preparing for damage control, still thinking they could manage me like any other problem that threatened their carefully constructed success. They had no idea what was coming. I spent the morning making copies of everything: emails, photos, financial records, phone logs. Jeff had been thorough in his digital archaeology, uncovering not just the affair and the stolen promotion, but a pattern of corporate misconduct that went back months. Miranda and Liam hadn't just been sleeping together. They'd been collaborating on contract negotiations that benefited his consulting firm at Summit's expense. Rachel hadn't just stolen my work. She'd been feeding confidential client information to competitors in exchange for job offers she was keeping as backup options. It was a web of betrayal and corruption that would make a federal prosecutor salivate. At 10 a.m., I walked into Summit Horizons headquarters for the first time since my resignation. The security guard, Pete, looked surprised to see me. "Thought you quit, Oliver," he said. "I did. Just here to clean out my office and return some company property." I held up a USB drive. Confidential files that shouldn't leave the building. Pete nodded and waved me through. I'd been coming to this building for 3 years. No one questioned my presence. I took the elevator to the executive floor, where Miranda's corner office sat empty. She was apparently still at her sister's, processing everything. Rachel's new office was 3 doors down, and through the glass walls I could see her on the phone, gesturing animatedly as she spoke. The conference room where my career had died was empty, so I set up shop there, connecting my laptop to the room's presentation system. Then I sent a simple email to every executive, department head, and board member in the company. Emergency meeting regarding corporate security breach. Conference room A, 11 a.m., attendance mandatory, evidence provided. They came because they had to. 17 people who ran Summit Horizon Tech, including 2 board members who happened to be in town for quarterly reviews. Rachel arrived last, looking nervous but trying to project confidence. "Oliver," she said, taking a seat near the door, "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "I bet you weren't," I replied, standing at the front of the room next to the large display screen. "Thank you all for coming. I know this is unusual, but I've discovered some information that requires immediate attention." James Morrison, the chief financial officer, checked his watch. "Oliver, with all due respect, you don't work here anymore. What could be so urgent that—" "Corporate espionage," I said simply. "Theft of proprietary information, conflict of interest violations, potential securities fraud. Should I continue?" The room went quiet. Rachel had gone very pale. "Those are serious accusations," said Patricia Wells, the board chair. "I hope you have evidence to support them." "I do," I said, clicking to the first slide. "Let's start with this email, sent by CEO Miranda Shaw to Rachel Connors 3 months ago, sharing confidential market analysis developed by the strategy department." The email appeared on screen, and I watched 17 faces react to seeing their CEO casually stealing employee work to benefit her friend. I walked them through the entire conspiracy, every stolen idea, every shared document, every casual discussion of how to manipulate the promotion process. "This is taken out of context," Rachel said, her voice shaky. "Strategic collaboration is normal in any organization." "Strategic collaboration," I repeated. "Is that what you call this?" The next slide showed her email about my presentation being flawless and how I wouldn't be doing the job much longer. Several people turned to stare at her, and I could see the moment they realized exactly what they were looking at. "But the intellectual property theft is just the beginning," I continued. "Let's talk about conflict of interest." The next series of slides detailed Miranda's affair with Liam Hart and how it had influenced contract negotiations. Hotel receipts, dinner dates, and email discussions about steering business toward his consulting firm in exchange for favorable terms on other deals. "Jesus Christ," muttered someone in the back. "And finally," I said, "we have Rachel's insurance policy." The last batch of evidence showed Rachel's communications with Summit's competitors, sharing client lists, strategic plans, and proprietary information while negotiating potential job offers. It was corporate espionage in its purest form. When I finished, the conference room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Rachel looked like she might vomit. Several executives were taking notes. Patricia Wells was already on her phone, probably calling the company's legal department. "These are very serious allegations," Patricia said when she hung up. "Rachel, do you have a response?" Rachel looked around the room like a trapped animal. This is all taken out of context. Oliver is obviously upset about the promotion decision and he's trying to— "The metadata on these emails has been verified," I interrupted. "The timestamps, IP addresses, and digital signatures are all authentic. This isn't about my hurt feelings, Rachel. This is about corporate malfeasance on a massive scale." James Morrison leaned forward. "Where is Miranda? She should be here to address these accusations." "According to her note, she's at her sister's house, processing everything," I said. "She left town after I confronted her with this evidence last night." "That's not suspicious at all," someone muttered. Patricia Wells stood up. "This meeting is over. Rachel, you're suspended pending a full investigation. Security will escort you out. Everyone else, please remain available for interviews with our legal team." Rachel tried one last desperate play. "You can't do this based on accusations from a disgruntled ex-employee. Oliver has obvious motives for—" "Rachel," Patricia said coldly, "stop talking. Anything you say now will only make this worse." Security arrived within minutes, Pete and two other guards who looked uncomfortable but determined. Rachel gathered her things with shaking hands, shooting me a look of pure hatred as she was escorted out. "Oliver," Patricia said as the room emptied, "I need to ask, why bring this to us? You could have gone to the authorities, the press, any number of places that would have been more damaging to the company." "Because Summit Horizon Tech isn't the villain here," I said. "The company was being victimized by its own executives. I worked here for 3 years, and I believe in what this place could be if it's run honestly." She nodded slowly. "We'll need you to provide a complete statement to our investigators. And Oliver? Thank you. This couldn't have been easy." "No," I said, packing up my laptop, "but it was necessary." As I left the building, I passed Rachel in the parking lot, loading boxes into her car while security watched. She saw me coming and straightened up, her composure finally cracking completely. "You destroyed my life," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I worked so hard to get where I was." "You stole to get where you were," I corrected. "You destroyed your own life the moment you decided that other people's work was yours to take. Miranda will never forgive you for this." "Miranda made her choice," I said. "Just like you did, just like I did." I got in my car and drove away, leaving Rachel standing in the parking lot with the wreckage of her stolen career scattered around her feet. The reckoning had begun. The story broke in the local business journal 3 days later. Summit Horizon CEO resigns amid corruption scandal. The details were appropriately vague. Corporate policies prevented the company from discussing ongoing investigations, but the implications were clear. Miranda Shaw's meteoric rise had ended in spectacular flameout. I was sitting in the driftwood when Troy showed me the article on his phone. "Says here she's pursuing other opportunities," he said with a grin. "That's corporate speak for fired in disgrace, right?" "Pretty much," I said, nursing a beer and watching the local news coverage on the bar's ancient television. Miranda's official headshot filled the screen while a reporter discussed the ongoing investigation into potential misconduct at one of the region's fastest-growing tech companies. My phone buzzed with a text from Jeff. "Rachel's been arrested. FBI got involved when they found the client lists she shared with competitors. Thought you'd want to know." I showed the message to Troy, who whistled low. "FBI? Damn, Oliver, you don't mess around." "I told you I was thorough," I said. The truth was, I hadn't expected federal involvement, but Rachel's corporate espionage had crossed state lines and involved publicly traded companies. What started as a simple case of workplace betrayal had mushroomed into a multi-agency investigation that would probably take years to fully unravel. Miranda called that evening while I was making dinner, the first time I'd heard from her since she'd fled to her sister's house. "Oliver," she said, her voice small and defeated. "I saw the news." "Did you?" I said, continuing to chop vegetables for a stir-fry. "How are you holding up?" "How do you think I'm holding up?" she snapped, some of her old fire returning. "My career is over. Rachel's been arrested. The FBI wants to interview me about Liam's contracts. My life is completely destroyed." "That's unfortunate," I said mildly. "Unfortunate?" Her voice rose to a near shriek. "You did this! You destroyed everything I worked for!" "No, Miranda, you destroyed everything you worked for. I just documented it." There was a long pause, filled only with the sound of her crying. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "What happens now?" "Now you face the consequences of your choices," I said, "just like everyone else. I mean with us, with our marriage." I set down my knife and considered the question. 3 days ago, I might have felt some sympathy for her, some lingering affection for the woman I'd once loved. But that woman, if she'd ever really existed, was gone, replaced by someone who could casually destroy her husband's career while sleeping with another man and calling it complicated. "There is no us," I said finally. "There's you, dealing with the legal and professional consequences of corporate misconduct and adultery. And there's me, moving on with my life." "Oliver, please." "Miranda," I interrupted. "You made your choice when you decided I was not executive material. When you shared my work with Rachel, when you started sleeping with Liam, when you chose to treat our marriage like a business problem to be managed rather than a partnership to be honored. I'm just responding to the reality you created." "I can change," she said desperately. "We can start over." "No," I said, the word final and absolute. "We can't, because I finally understand who you really are, and I don't want to be married to that person." She hung up without another word. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Patricia Wells. Summit's investigation had concluded, and they wanted to offer me Miranda's old job, not CEO, but Vice President of Strategic Development, with a salary that was double what I'd been making as a senior analyst. "The board was impressed with your thoroughness," she said during our meeting, "and your loyalty to the company during a difficult situation. We think you'd be an excellent addition to the executive team." "What about my lack of executive presence?" I asked, remembering Miranda's casual dismissal of my leadership potential. Patricia smiled. "I think recent events have demonstrated that you have exactly the kind of executive presence we need. Someone who puts integrity above personal relationships, who does the right thing even when it's difficult, who can see problems clearly and solve them completely. I accepted the offer. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Miranda, facing potential federal charges and unemployable in her chosen field, didn't contest my terms. I kept the house, the car, and most of our assets. She kept her legal problems and her shattered reputation. Rachel pleaded guilty to corporate espionage and received 2 years in federal prison. Her Harvard MBA and Fortune 500 experience didn't count for much when she was wearing an orange jumpsuit. Liam's consulting firm lost its contracts with Summit and several other companies when the conflict of interest violations became public. Last I heard, he was working for a small firm in another state, his reputation as damaged as his former lover's. On my first day as vice president, I sat in the conference room where my career had almost died, looking out at the same faces that had watched Rachel steal my promotion 6 months earlier. But now, I was the one at the head of the table, presenting my strategic vision for the company's future. Leadership, I told them, isn't about having the right presence or saying the right words. It's about doing the right thing, especially when no one is watching. It's about earning success rather than stealing it. And it's about understanding that integrity isn't just a nice ideal, it's a practical necessity for any organization that wants to survive and thrive. After the meeting, I walked to my new office, the same corner office where Miranda had once held court, where she'd planned my professional destruction while maintaining the facade of a loving marriage. I'd had it completely redecorated, removing every trace of her presence and replacing it with something cleaner, simpler, more honest. On my desk was a framed photo, not of a wife or family, but of the driftwood on a quiet Tuesday evening, Troy behind the bar, regulars nursing their beers and sharing their stories. It reminded me of where I came from, of the people who stayed loyal when loyalty mattered, of the simple truth that character is revealed not in moments of triumph, but in moments of betrayal. My computer chimed with an email from Jeff, who'd been promoted to IT director as a reward for his role in uncovering the corruption. Saw the news about your promotion. Well deserved. By the way, Miranda tried to log into her old company email account yesterday. Some people never learn. Want me to forward you the access logs? I smiled and typed back, "No thanks. I'm done looking backward." And I was. Miranda, Rachel, and Liam had taught me valuable lessons about trust, loyalty, and the price of betrayal. But they'd also taught me something more important. That sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's simply living well, succeeding honestly, and proving that integrity isn't a weakness to be exploited, but a strength to be respected. I had everything I'd ever wanted. A job that challenged me, respect from my colleagues, financial security, and the knowledge that I'd earned every bit of it through my own work, my own skills, my own character. Miranda had been wrong about one thing. I was executive material after all. I just wasn't the kind of executive she understood. That evening, I stopped by the Driftwood for a celebratory drink. Troy poured me a beer and raised his own glass in a toast. "To promotion," he said with a grin. "To justice," I corrected. "To both," he said, and we drank. Outside, the sun was setting over the harbor, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that doing the right thing wasn't just morally correct, it was strategically sound. I'd learned that lesson the hard way, but I'd learned it completely, and unlike my ex-wife and her co-conspirators, I'd never forget it.